I'm back. I was in our bedroom finishing packing my bag when I heard my wife Valerie return from the grocery store. She had the cheerful voice she always had when she was happy with her shopping. A cheerful mood that I was about to ruin, and that would have been unpleasant. Valerie is usually cheerful, but her mood can change from one extreme to the other in a split second. Making sure I hadn't forgotten anything, I slowly descended the stairs with my bag on my shoulder. Valerie was rummaging around in the kitchen, trying to find a place to put the mountain of things she had brought in. "You bought too much, dear, considering you'll be alone all week," I said in an even tone, as if stating the obvious. She dropped the plastic bag of apples and looked at me questioningly, her face cute. "What? What did you say?" "That I'm leaving for a week. My flight is in a few hours," I replied with an exaggeratedly neutral expression. "Wait a minute. Is this a joke? You didn't tell me you were going on a business trip this week. Where are you going? How's your back?" "Oh, my back is much better. And I didn't say it was a business trip. I'm not going for work. I'm taking a week off. I'm going to Cancun." "What? What is this nonsense?" she almost shouted. "You're going to Cancun alone, without me, without even telling me?" "Well, I just told you." "Isn't this a trip you're supposed to take with your wife? I mean, with me. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" She was clearly furious. "What difference does it make? You keep saying you can't take time off until June 1st. That's almost 3 months, and I'm going to Mexico now because I'm tired of freezing here. It's not my problem that you've already used up all your vacation time for this year." "I haven't used all my vacation days, Chuck. I told you I couldn't take time off until I finished the project I'm working on," she replied, trying to keep her composure. I just shrugged. "Why don't you take out a loan for the trip and wait until we can go together? I'd love to go to Mexico with my husband. You'd have more fun going there with me than by yourself," she pleaded. "Oh, I didn't say I was going alone. I'm going with a friend," I replied, still maintaining the casual tone that seemed to get on her nerves. "Who are you going to Cancun with? Do I know him?" "No, you don't know him," I replied. Wait. Are you saying you're going to spend a week in Cancun with another woman, and you really think I'm going to accept that?" "Why not? It's only a week, and you can't go anyway. Remember your project?" "Oh, no, sir, it's not that." She was interrupted by the sound of my taxi pulling up. "I have to go," I said. I grabbed my main luggage, which I had left in the closet by the front door, kissed the stunned Valerie, and left the house. Julie was already sitting in the car. She got out, pretending to help me with my luggage, but really just smiling at Valerie to annoy her. I put my luggage in the trunk, and Julie and I got into the back seat. An angry Valerie stood on the porch, glaring at us. "See you in a week, honey," I said with a smirk. We only had time to wave goodbye before the driver pulled away. Now you're probably all thinking I'm a jerk, right? Well, maybe I am. But before you find me guilty on all counts, let me explain how I became such a jerk to my loving wife. My name is Charles Coughlin, but everyone calls me Chuck. I married Valerie Ebel when we were 26. Val was a marketing expert and worked for a fast-growing marketing and communications company in the suburbs of Toronto. She had been there for 3 years and was on her way to the top of her career. My job was a little less prestigious. I was co-owner of an occupational health and safety consulting company that I had started with 2 friends a year before I met Val. When I say my job wasn't prestigious, I just mean that talking about health and safety in the workplace is a surefire way to be labeled a nerd. But as I often say, getting through the day without losing a limb is a nice bonus to your paycheck, right? Val and I have always liked to do things our own way, hence the 2 yellow cars, the pet iguana, and the wedding on a freezing January Sunday. This year was our 5th anniversary. I had planned a nice surprise, a weekend at the famous Montebello Castle. I knew Val had always wanted to go there. I wanted to wait until the week before the weekend and ask Val to take the following Friday off, since it was our anniversary. It would be a short flight from Toronto to Ottawa, then an hour's drive to the resort, and we would celebrate our anniversary at their upscale restaurant. Unfortunately, things didn't go as I had planned. 2 days before I was going to ask her to take Friday off, Val told me she had to go on a business trip to Atlanta next week. "Will you be back by Friday?" I asked. "Number, we're leaving on Tuesday, and we'll be back next Tuesday or Wednesday." "Honey, next Friday is our wedding anniversary. Do you really have to go next week? Can't you postpone it for a few days? We haven't taken a single day off together in over a year and a half." I knew Val had worked hard to make a name for herself, both at her company and in the industry as a whole, and I respected and supported her. I did the same at my company. We both put in the necessary time at work. We both had to travel frequently for work, but the timing of her trip was, to say the least, unfortunate. "Chuck, I can't change the dates. The client is insisting that we meet with his team in Atlanta from Wednesday through Friday, and we're going to take advantage of being in the area to go to Charlotte over the weekend to meet with A2B2C Corporation to try to revive a project that was put on hold almost a year ago due to budget cuts, so it's very important that we go." "Okay, who's we?" I asked. "Greg will be there along with Claire and Vivian." I looked at her for a few seconds before deciding that it all made some sense. "I had something planned for our anniversary, you know." "I'm so sorry, Chuck. Maybe we can reschedule? Maybe in a couple of weeks when I'm a little less busy at work? I promise I'll make it up to you." She sounded sincere. I rushed to the phone and canceled everything. Since there was a whole week left before departure, I managed to get all my money back, including the plane tickets. I tried not to show how upset I was throughout the evening, and I think I succeeded because Val quickly returned to her usual cheerful mood. The rest of the week and the weekend passed without incident. We did what everyone does on weekends, which is to say we did chores and ran errands. Dinner at her parents' house on Sunday evening also passed without incident. Her mother grew gloomier with every glass of wine, and her father insisted that everything was much better in the good old days. On the way home, she struck up a light conversation. "How was your week, dear?" she asked. "I have an audit at a client's office on Monday, and I have to go to the office for meetings on Thursday and Friday. I'll be working from home on Tuesday and Wednesday. Why do you ask?" "Just because I'm curious. I'm always interested in what's going on with you, you know?" On Monday evening, Val was a little out of sorts. She always suffered from stage fright, and usually the day before a performance, she was a little depressed and withdrawn. This time, she was cheerful as usual. She seemed to be in control of her stress, and not wanting to make her more nervous, I decided not to mention my observations. On Tuesday morning, when I got out of the shower and went into the kitchen, Val was already eating breakfast. "What time are you leaving?" I asked. "The taxi is picking me up at 9 o'clock, she replied. This was unusual because Val always packed at the last minute. Usually, half an hour before she left, she would turn into a whirlwind, running around the apartment trying to finish getting ready and zipping up her suitcase, then rushing down the stairs. But that morning it was already 7:45, and she was taking her time, finishing her coffee. "You seem very relaxed today, dear. Will it be an easy trip?" "Yes, I think so. I'm going because Mrs. Robertson, their vice president of marketing, specifically asked me to be there as her main contact, but Greg and Claire will actually be in charge." We chatted about trivial things for a few more minutes until her taxi arrived. She hugged me and kissed me with her signature kiss. "Have a good week, my love, and I promise I'll make it up to you. We'll celebrate our anniversary properly," she said, still hugging me. "Have a safe trip. Call me when you get there," I replied, and she drove away. After breakfast, I sat down at my computer and started answering emails. At 10:30, I took a coffee break and suddenly realized that Val hadn't texted me to say she had arrived at the airport. This was very unusual. Don't get me wrong, I never asked her to tell me every little detail about her whereabouts. But you should know that Valerie is a not big, but rather habitual Messenger user, And she has a somewhat annoying habit of sending dozens of messages explaining what she's doing, attaching photos of what she just saw, and so on. So I waited to hear from her, since we live in Richmond Hill and the trip to Pearson Airport takes no more than 45 minutes during off-peak hours. We never installed tracking apps on our phones, and I had no way of determining where her phone was to know if she was at the airport or not. I didn't want to look like a stalker, and I certainly didn't want to embarrass her in front of her colleagues by calling her less than 2 hours after she left. Out of curiosity, I went to my favorite flight tracking website. I didn't ask Val for her flight number, but it was easy to find. She probably arrived at the airport around 9:25. For domestic flights, they ask you to arrive 2 hours before departure. Knowing how nervous Val tends to be, she probably tried to arrive a little earlier than 2 hours. That meant her flight to Atlanta would be no earlier than 11:30 and no later than 12:30. You've probably heard the old saying, "Curiosity killed the cat." Well, I shouldn't have been so curious. A quick search showed that the last flight to Atlanta was at 9:45. She couldn't have been on that flight. The next one was at 2 p.m. What? Why would she rush to catch an 8:45 flight when the next one was 5 hours later? Then it occurred to me that if she was still at the airport, she would show up on Messenger. I checked, and sure enough, there was a green dot on her profile. Knowing her FOMO, I figured she would stay online until the flight attendants asked passengers to turn off their phones when exiting the plane. I went to the kitchen to finally drink my coffee, keeping an eye on my wife's status on Messenger. I tried to focus on my tasks for the next hour, and to my surprise, managed to get a few useful things done. Then, at 11:44, I saw that the green dot had disappeared, and Messenger indicated that my wife had been active 2 minutes ago. I returned to my favorite website and marked the flights that were scheduled to depart in the near future. Montreal, possible. It was a 50-minute flight. I would find out soon. Iqaluit, impossible. She couldn't be flying to the Arctic. What would she be doing there? I dismissed that option. Tokyo, much longer than the others. I won't know until late tonight. Detroit, another 50-minute flight, another one to keep an eye on. Key Largo, 3 hours and 30 minutes. Vacation? No, she wouldn't. Unless, well, definitely worth checking. San Francisco? That's a 5-hour flight, another possibility. Okay, if she comes back online in an hour or so, I'll know she's in Detroit or Montreal. Then all I have to do is figure out where she's flying next, figuratively speaking. But whatever flight she chooses, it'll be easy to figure out because their arrival times are far enough apart that I can guess. I tried to get back to work, but my mind was elsewhere. I made myself a sandwich and sat back down at the computer 10 minutes later. The website indicated that the flight to Montreal would arrive first. I couldn't help but notice how well the website was designed. The map displayed all the planes in the air in real time. I was able to track the flight's approach to Montreal Airport and then its landing. The flight to Detroit was scheduled to land in 10 minutes. I checked Messenger on my phone, and 4 minutes after the flight landed in Montreal, my wife's status was still offline. She wasn't in Montreal. The same thing happened with the flight to Detroit a few minutes later. My wife was still offline a few minutes after the plane landed. I was left empty-handed again. The next chance was a flight to Cayo Largo, which was scheduled to land at 3:28 p.m. For the next 2 hours, I couldn't concentrate or do anything useful. I browsed YouTube and Facebook, watched silly videos and short clips, or liked idiotic jokes that even my uncles would consider outdated. I watched the last minutes of the flight to Cayo Largo, 3 minutes to landing. Was I becoming paranoid? I had always laughed at stalkers, and now I was counting down the minutes until planes that probably had nothing to do with me landed. 2 minutes until landing. My phone rang. It was one of my colleagues. No time to be distracted. I'll call back later. Where am I? 1 minute to landing. Maybe I was completely wrong. No, that's impossible, most likely. Or definitely not. I felt like I was in college when I had to solve a problem on a test, and after 3 pages of tedious calculations, I realized that the answer couldn't be that ridiculous, that the solution had to be simpler. The plane finally landed in Cayo Largo, and almost simultaneously, as if on cue, the damn green dot reappeared. I stared at the computer screen for several minutes, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. When I came back to reality, my brain was paralyzed, desperately needing answers to all the questions that had popped into my head at once. What was she doing in Cuba? Who was she with? Why did she lie to me? And why, damn it, was this trip more important than our damn 5th wedding anniversary? The phone rang. It was a new message on Messenger from my beloved and honest wife. Just landed in Atlanta. There was a delay. Everything is fine now. I'll call you later. Love you. To calm myself down, or because I couldn't calm down, I checked the list of recent arrivals at the Atlanta airport. The last flight from Toronto had landed at 12:10 p.m., and the next one wasn't scheduled to depart for another 40 minutes. Okay, I could admit that my conclusions were mostly based on coincidences. I had no way of knowing if she was really in Cayo Largo and with whom. I would have to ask her when she got back and make her come clean. That is, if I didn't go crazy before then. Unless... I read a little about Cayo Largo. It's a small island south of the main island of Cuba. It's not very densely populated with only 10 to 12 resorts. It wouldn't be hard to find someone there. In the blink of an eye, I was on the website of my favorite online ticket agency, looking for tickets to Cayo Largo. As luck would have it, there were daily flights from Toronto to Cayo Largo in January. I was able to book a ticket for the next day at a surprisingly reasonable price. I planned to wander around the island anonymously and see if I could find Valerie there. I know that going to Cuba on a whim, just because of a coincidence I saw on a flight tracking app and a messenger app, is probably the height of absurdity. I suspect I wasn't thinking very clearly at the time. Now, the most important thing was to see her without being noticed. It would be completely ridiculous if my wife caught me at breakfast. Obviously, I needed to book a room at another hotel. Valerie and I aren't rich, but for people our age, we're quite well off. Cuba is considered an inexpensive destination, but you can improve your vacation by choosing a more expensive hotel. That meant she was probably staying at one of the most expensive hotels on the island. I made sure to book a room at a cheaper hotel. I called my colleagues and told them that due to personal circumstances, I had to take the rest of the week off. It was already late, but I still had almost an hour to run a few errands, including stopping by the nearest joke and prank store, where I bought a few useful items. In the evening, I packed a light bag and took a sleeping pill to calm my brain, which had been working at full capacity all day, and fall asleep. The next day, I was on my way to Cayo Largo, trying to focus on the details of my plan and trying my best not to choke on the disgusting food that the airline pompously calls in-flight meals. But the flight attendants were very nice and friendly, so I forgave the airline. Customs and passport control took an incredibly long time, and by the time I finally got to the hotel, it was already dark. There was still a small chance that Valerie was staying at this hotel, so I tried not to draw attention to myself in the check-in line and later in the restaurant. My hotel was very cheap, and the internet connection was poor at best. When I woke up in the morning, I wasn't surprised that I hadn't received any messages from Valerie after she confirmed that she had landed in Atlanta. It took me over half an hour to get ready. Natural-looking fake beards aren't that easy to attach, especially if you're not used to wearing them. The day before, I bought 2 new swimsuits, several new t-shirts, and new sunglasses. Everything I needed so that Valerie wouldn't recognize me. I also brought binoculars. I was prepared to tell customs that I was into bird watching if they asked, but they didn't even notice. After a hearty breakfast and applying copious amounts of sunscreen, I set out to explore the island's miles of white sandy beaches. My hotel was located almost in the center of a chain of hotels along the beach. I decided that on the first day I would go to the east side, and on the second day to the west. It's a good thing I run and hike, because walking on the beach all day is not the same as walking on a street or a tourist trail. Walking on sand that gives way under your feet requires much more endurance than walking on a hard surface. Even though I'm in good shape, I was completely exhausted after the first day. I walked around 5 resorts, both on the hotel grounds and on the beach, several times back and forth, afraid of missing her, but Valerie was nowhere to be seen. I started to seriously think that my trip to Cuba to play PI was more absurd than anything else. But hey, I was already there. It was too late to change my mind. That evening at the bar, I met a nice couple from Calgary. They told me that on the western tip of the island, there was a beach called Playa Paraíso. The beach was open to all tourists on the island and could be reached by bus. Great. Now my wife and all her luggage were a moving target. After a couple of glasses of Legendario rum, I left the bar and went to the reception desk, where a nice girl told me that buses to Playa Paraíso leave every 30 minutes every morning. I decided to explore the western part of the resort the next day and go to Paraíso the day after that. In the evening, there was no message from Valerie. I wasn't surprised. They had so much work to do in Atlanta. The next day, I put on a different model of fake beard so that Valerie wouldn't recognize me. I looked like a gangster, or at least like someone you wouldn't want to mess with. Late in the morning, before lunch, I started to think I was wasting my time and considered going home. Wandering aimlessly along the beach, I passed the 4th resort west of my hotel and stumbled upon a gold mine. There was my beloved wife, her face covered with a 1/4-inch layer of sunscreen. I wondered if she was doing it to avoid getting burned or to prevent her tan from betraying her when she got home. She was sipping a mojito or a margarita or something like that. And, as expected, her favorite colleague Greg was sipping his drink, flirting with my wife. "What a liar she is," I muttered so quietly that no one heard me. I kept a reasonable distance from them, found a deck chair and quietly dragged it a few meters behind them, at an angle so she couldn't easily see me. But I wouldn't miss a thing. The caressing continued for another half hour. I felt disgusted. The only thing I could think of to satisfy myself was to pour a bucket of sand on their faces and beat them half to death. But rest assured, I did nothing of the sort. I'm more of an intellectual than a muscle-bound type, and I didn't particularly want to spend the next few months in a Cuban prison. Instead, I captured my trip on the excellent camera of my new cell phone. A few photos here and there would undoubtedly add weight to the inevitable confrontation that would follow. A few hours later, after they had had their fill of each other, they decided they still had room for a real lunch. They began gathering their things and headed back to the resort, passing me as if I were a complete stranger. Was it because my costume was perfect and didn't give me away? Or because they were so absorbed in each other that the rest of the world simply ceased to exist? I quickly dismissed these thoughts. At that moment, they were just a useless distraction. I was about to follow them to the restaurant and find another place where I could see them, but it seemed like it was my lucky day. They headed straight for their bungalow. I followed them at a distance and saw them enter their apartment. Door 903. Bingo. I had everything I needed. Luck was on my side again because their apartment was on the side of the building facing the beach, not on the side where people passing by could interfere with my observation. Satisfied, I returned to the hotel, had dinner, and spent the rest of the day by the pool. In the evening, I went to the bar for a drink. After all, it was my 5th wedding anniversary. What could be better than celebrating alone while my wife was having fun with some bastard a few hundred meters away from me? Around 9 p.m., after a quick dinner, I went to their hotel. I changed my fake beard and clothes again to minimize the risk of attracting their attention, since wearing sunglasses at night would be stupid. No offense to those who popularized the idea in the 80s. I put on a thicker fake beard, fake glasses, and a cap to hide my facial features as much as possible. Their apartment was dark. I figured they were still at the restaurant, bar, or somewhere else. I spotted a bench from which I could see their apartment. Around 10:30 p.m., I saw them return, again huddled together like teenagers on a first date. I waited a few minutes after they entered the apartment and quietly approached the window. As expected, there was no one around who could see me. There was a small gap between the two curtains, but it was enough to see into the room. Was that good or bad? Well, seeing your wife naked next to some jerk sitting on the bed can't be good. But on the other hand, the end justifies the means. Considering that I wasn't there to get turned on by peeping, but to take pictures to strengthen my case, I have to say that this small gap was very convenient. I didn't want to stay there too long, afraid that someone might see me and call the resort management. I went for a walk around the resort, sat for a while, and enjoyed the place. It was indeed a much better resort than the one I was staying at. Around 11 o'clock, I decided it was time to visit my wife's love nest one last time. Everyone who had been watching them half an hour ago had probably gone to bed by then. When I knelt down again at their window, I saw something that hurt me even more than the sight of my wife's sexual pleasures earlier. They were watching something on TV. It wasn't an affair, it wasn't a fling. It was a full-blown affair, a parallel life. Definitely not something I could live with. I took a few more photos and returned to the hotel. I went to the front desk and booked a ticket home via the internet terminal. There was nothing available until 8:40 p.m. the next day. I returned to my room, fell onto the bed, and for the first time in many years, fell asleep in tears. I spent the next day preparing for the next steps. I was going to go to work all week, if only to avoid being in the same room as Valerie when she returned. Then I was going to make an appointment with a lawyer and give her the documents at work. I know it's humiliating, but since the affair apparently started in her office, it seemed logical to expose her at work. On Saturday evening, I was at the Key Largo airport when I got a message from Valerie. "Hi, sweetie. Sorry I didn't text you earlier. I've been really busy. Everything turned out to be much more complicated than I expected." "Yeah, sure." "I'm in Charlotte right now, meeting with our local team tomorrow. Everything's going well. Looking forward to our anniversary, baby." "Yeah, sure. Right." I decided to play with her a little. "I hope you're enjoying what you're doing, baby, even if you're tired." She replied immediately, "Well, not really. You know how business trips are, all work and no play, but I'm thinking about you all the time. I have to go. Love you." I was stunned. "I think about you all the time." "Yeah, sure. Right." When I got home and went to the office on Monday, I was so swamped with work that I didn't have time to find a good divorce lawyer and start divorce proceedings. On my way to lunch, I ran into Julie McCalla, a dentist who owned a clinic in my building. I had known Julie for about 3 years. There had always been some kind of connection between us, but it was never anything that could stand the test of marital fidelity. Julie had recently gotten divorced. Her stupid husband had left her when she got pregnant a year after they were married. The guy said he didn't want a child. Julie lost the baby. The jerk tried to get her back by sending flowers and love notes, but Julie didn't want him. The guy had proven himself to be an immature jerk too many times. Julie noticed my gloomy mood that day and made me go to a cafe a little further away than our usual spots so I could get it off my chest. And it worked. By the time I was done, I had gotten everything off my chest. She listened intently and sighed deeply when I finished. "That's awful," Julie said. "And on your wedding anniversary, what are you going to do?" "Oh, the divorce is already decided. I just can't live with that kind of disrespect, humiliation, and lack of attention. The only thing I'm not sure about is the timing. I have to go to Halifax next week for a seminar. Should I file for divorce before I leave while I'm there, or after I get back? I feel like if I do it while I'm gone, I'll look like a coward. I have a lot to do before I leave, and I won't be able to deal with all the fallout before I go. I think I'll wait until I get back." Julie looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. It was somewhere between sexy and devilish. Why don't you tease her a little just to get back at her? She suggested. Interesting. What do you mean? Over the course of the week, Valerie sent me several messages, and I responded to most of them rather tersely, pretending to be very busy with the 2 big contracts we had discussed. She didn't specify when she would be back. I think the last thing she wanted was for me to show up at the airport to pick her up and see her kissing Greg Weber on the neck while they waited for their luggage. But I knew that the flight from Cayo Largo was scheduled to land at 10:45 p.m. on Tuesday night. When I heard her come in around midnight, I pretended to be asleep. She took a quick shower and quietly got into bed. I lay on my left side with my back to her. She tried to snuggle up to me, but I didn't move and didn't let her know I was aware of her presence. The next day, I got up and left the house before she woke up. I didn't want to talk to her. She texted me several times during the day, but I replied briefly. I tried not to show my anger and let her think I was just busy with work. When I returned home that evening, I probably gave the best performance of my life, pretending that my lower back was hurting. I slept in the guest room, explaining that I would sleep better alone because her movements in bed might cause spasms. I managed to keep up the charade until she left on Sunday morning. And that brings us back to the beginning of this story. Julie and I laughed like children as we watched Valerie's annoyed expression from a few feet away. The taxi driver dropped Julie off because she had to get home early, and I continued on to the airport to catch my flight to Halifax. Yes, I lied to Valerie. The idea to go to Cancun was Julie's, a simple trick that cost only a few dollars in taxi fare and annoyed Valerie all week. I loved it. At the end of the day, I sent Valerie a message to let her know I had arrived safely in Cancun. I saw that she had read the message but didn't reply. Over the course of the week, I sent her several messages with photos of myself on the beach with palm trees and flowers in the background. No, there are no palm trees in Halifax, and there are no flowers in January. Come on, it's Canada. Don't worry, I'll explain later. Suffice it to say that Valerie didn't talk to me all week. I texted her that I would be home around 1 p.m. on Sunday. I wasn't expecting a welcome home or a party, but I was curious to see what she would do with that information. She did indeed use that information. When I arrived on Sunday, I couldn't open the door to my house. I couldn't even get in through the side door. Valerie had obviously changed the locks on the house. I called, then sent her a text message. There was no answer. I stood there for no more than 3 minutes when I saw a gray car pull up at the corner. A guy who matched the color of the car got out, walked up to me, and asked if I was Charles Coughlin. I showed him my ID, and he handed me the famous envelope with the words, "Delivered. Have a nice day." But that's not all. "You can't stay here, sir. There's a restraining order in the envelope. It says you are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Abelson in any way and that you must remain at least 100 meters away from the house at all times." I was stunned. I knew she could be very impulsive, but given her betrayal last week, I thought she would take a more conciliatory stance. Mr. Gray left. I loaded my luggage into the car and drove away. Not far from the office, I found a motel where I could spend the night. First thing Monday morning, I started looking for a lawyer. Fortunately, my company's lawyer knew a few, and I was able to arrange a meeting with Mr. John Petzel for the following day. On Monday evening, I studied the divorce papers. Valerie had launched a full-scale attack to completely destroy me. Of course, she filed for divorce on the grounds of marital infidelity. She referred to our prenuptial agreement, which stated that in the event of infidelity by one spouse, the injured party could walk away with 80% of the assets. She wanted 80% of everything: the house, my company, the value of our cars and furniture, our investments, and our bank accounts. The meeting with the lawyer on Tuesday was very productive. I managed to get part of the restraining order lifted, as the house had been registered solely in my name since the day my parents left it to me, a year before I met Valerie. My lawyer drafted a letter requesting that the house be vacated within 7 days. He also prepared another letter stating that I would only sign the documents if she agreed to a meeting between us and our lawyers. She agreed to the meeting on the condition that it take place at her lawyer's office. The meeting was scheduled for the following week. The next few days passed as usual: work, food, and sleep. I stopped by Julie's clinic for a minute and we chatted for a few minutes, but I didn't stay for lunch or a drink, fearing that Valerie was spying on me and trying to gather evidence. "Mr. Coughlin, Mr. Petzel, please come in." Michael Miller, Valerie's lawyer, greeted us as we entered the conference room. Valerie sat quietly, trying to look neutral, probably on her lawyer's advice. "Gentlemen, you requested this meeting, so you have the floor," Mr. Miller said. John looked at me with a slight smile. "Okay, Mrs. Abelson, you filed for divorce from my client on the grounds of adultery in order to take advantage of the prenuptial agreement. What evidence do you have of marital infidelity?" "Well, he deliberately told me he was going on vacation with the girl who was in the car with him. He sent me photos all week and came back a week later. My proof is his candid admission." I took the phone and scrolled to the photos Valerie was talking about. "Are you referring to these photos, Valerie?" I asked. She looked at me the way a bad teacher looks at a child who doesn't understand that 2 + 2 = 4. "First of all, these photos prove nothing because the prostitute you're talking about isn't in them. Second, you must be out of your mind if you don't realize that these are photos of me that you took yourself 3 years ago in Punta Cana." Valerie's neutral expression was no longer so neutral. John pushed a stack of papers toward Valerie's lawyer. "These are receipts from hotels and restaurants in Halifax for the week Mr. Coughlin was supposedly in Cancun. There's also a copy of the conference program he was a speaker at. As you can see, Mr. Coughlin was not in Cancun that week. The woman you mentioned, a certain Mrs. Julie McCalla, is a dentist at a clinic located in the same building as Mr. Coughlin's office. Here are documents confirming that she was at her clinic here in Toronto the entire week. So she did not travel with Mr. Coughlin." Valerie's neutral expression now clearly wavered between sarcasm and calm. "Now, Mrs. Abelson, what other evidence do you have that Mr. Coughlin was cheating on you?" "If you weren't cheating on me, why did you pretend you were going to do it? Why did you lie to me?" Valerie asked. "Well, I wanted to see how you would react to a situation that would change your life," I said, glaring at her. She looked at me in confusion. "Gentlemen, I need a few minutes to talk to my client alone, if you don't mind." Mr. Miller led Valerie out of the room. John and I didn't say a word, not knowing if there were microphones in the room. A few minutes later, they returned. This time, Valerie didn't even try to hide her anger. "We are changing the grounds for divorce," Mr. Miller announced. "You will receive an amended statement based on psychological abuse for tormenting my client by pretending to cheat on her. You understand that in this case you cannot invoke the prenuptial agreement?" John asked. "We understand. We will seek a standard 50-50 division of assets. Since the house belongs to you, you will receive 50% of the company, the cars, the furniture, the investments, and the bank accounts." Then John took out another document. "Mr. Miller, these are the company's legal documents which clearly show that Mr. Coughlin's company structure is fully protected in the event of the divorce of one of its shareholders. Mrs. Abley has no legal claim to it." Valerie's lawyer took the document, studied it for a few minutes, then looked at Valerie and shook his head. Valerie was furious. "Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to show you some very nice photos from my beloved wife's business trip to Atlanta," I said with a smirk. John handed them a series of photos. If I'm not mistaken, these photos depict various scenes from a very unusual business trip taken by Valerie Abelson and Greg Weber from her office. As you can see, the level of intimacy between colleagues at this marketing agency is very high, and the climate is surprisingly warm for Atlanta in mid-January. Valerie and her lawyer were momentarily speechless. "Mr. Coughlin, who took these photos? Where were they taken, and how can we be sure they weren't faked?" asked Mr. Miller. "Oh, that's very simple. I took them myself in Cayo Largo, Cuba. Look, they're still in the camera app on my phone. You can see for yourself that they haven't been doctored, and the dates matched the dates of a very important business trip Valerie couldn't postpone, which means it was our 5th wedding anniversary. Mr. Miller looked at the photos and at my phone. Valerie was completely stunned. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but couldn't utter a word. Can I talk to Mrs. Abelson alone? Her lawyer asked. We both nodded. I think we scored some points, a lot more than the Maple Leafs last night, John said. A few minutes later, they returned. This time, Valerie's eyes were swollen, and it was clear that she had been crying the entire time they were out of the room. Mrs. Abelson wishes to withdraw her petition for divorce and seek marriage counseling in an attempt to save her marriage, Mr. Miller said in the most unconvincing tone imaginable. John handed them the final document. Mrs. Abel, consider this official notice. Mr. Coughlin has filed for divorce on grounds of marital infidelity and psychological abuse. Oh, and according to the order sent to you last week, you must vacate Mr. Coughlin's home by 5 p.m. today. We left the room, leaving Mr. Miller dejected and Valerie stunned. I didn't see Valerie until the divorce hearing. She signed all the papers, and the divorce was finalized as I had requested. As I was leaving the courthouse after the hearing, Valerie ran after me. Chuck, I have just one question, please. Okay. Ask away. I think you figured out that I wasn't in Atlanta because the flight schedules didn't match. I missed that. But how did you figure out that I was in Key Largo of all places? I laughed. No. I'm not answering that question. I don't want to give you an advantage over the poor next husband you're going to cheat on. I wish you a happy life, Valerie. My ex-husband told me no one is going to get married to a sterile woman. But 15 years after that, he met my kids, and he saw that I was never the problem. 15 years ago, I divorced my husband when I discovered he was having an affair with his childhood sweetheart. They even had a son together and everything. I was hounded by his mistress, so I resigned. I was completely broken. But when things seemed darkest, my later husband came into my life, and I was able to begin working up the strength to make my life whole again. We built a cozy, peaceful home together, but the peace didn't last. I encountered my ex-husband in person for the first time in 15 years. You're still single, huh? Who will marry you? A barren woman. He sneered with a smug smile. You still don't know how to be nice, do you? I replied calmly. My son is adorable. He gets it from his mother. He smirked, clearly proud. Look at my kid. He's a good-looking kid, too, he said, still towering over me. Oh, really? The pet, I added with a serene smile. And speaking of which, let you to my kids, too. When I entered with my son, my husband could see nothing, but he froze, trembling visibly. My name is Caroline Jones. I'm 38, and I'm a social worker and marriage and family therapist, and I live with my daughter Emma, 11, my son Liam, 13, and my husband Ethan, also 38. Liam, in his 9th grade year here at the middle school, is also going through his bad boy rebellion stage. He's being a little rascal and is super busy nowadays. Then, when he goes over that line, my husband Ethan steps in and facilitates how to get him back home. Then there's Emma, who likes makeup and fashion. The youngest, and the only girl, she gets what she wants. Liam adores his baby sister, but he panics if she playfully feigns that she won't love him anymore. You better be nice to Mom, or I'm not going to like you anymore, big brother. He catches himself at once. Sorry. Okay, look, I'll be nice to Mom, okay? He's the adorable and the easy one to grasp and always the bringer of life to our home. Yes, our lives are full of a kind of happiness, but even those people don't know the full story, as in I'm a divorcee, married to a different person. I divorced my first husband after he committed a deep betrayal. 15 years ago, I was married to a man I'll call Michael. He was an upperclassman of mine in college. We had so many friends in common and both received such an overwhelming level of support and love from everyone in our lives. First, it was all good. We talked about kids a lot. I really want a baby soon. Not all wear the same clothes. It was something we both were so looking forward to doing, having a family. But as they say, life doesn't always go according to plan. After a year of trying, we were still not pregnant. And every time I got my period, a tension would grow between us. None of us felt right about that. So we had many serious conversations, and we spent a lot of money on why we couldn't have children treatments. All of the tests had come back normal. Their infertility had no explained medical cause. But it didn't save our marriage. In the beginning, Michael was great and all for giving it a go. But with the months of being without a baby turning into years, he became more and more distant. He had lost patience, and he was a bit different towards me. "When am I ever going to be a father?" One day he shouted, kicking the words as a jibe. He was brutal, accusing her. He was making it clear through clear insinuation that he thought I was the one we had so far not managed to replicate, and then things got out of hand. He stopped doing any housework, no cooking, dishes, laundry, or cleaning. "And why are you not doing housework all of a sudden?" "You used to do it before," he snarled, "because you, sweetheart, are infertile. If you're not cleaning up around the house, why are we even married? You aren't doing what you should be doing as a woman." His words cut like knives. They kept getting worse. "My sister and her husband are already trying for a second baby. Isn't that great? They're having their second and we haven't even had our first." He gave me mean looks one after another. "If you had a normal body, I would have been a father by now. How can you tell me I'm not normal? And we don't even know what's causing it yet," I snapped back. But he dismissed me coldly. "It's always the woman's fault if a couple can't have kids. Didn't you know that? If I'd known you were sterile, I'd never have married you. You should feel guilty." The words slid into me like thorns, and the pressure didn't even all come from him. His family joined in too. My in-laws started calling me, "When are we going to meet a grandson?" It didn't feel real to me at first. "It's been only a year. Babies are a blessing and it takes time." But it seemed to fuel only their disgust. His mother became particularly vicious. "You are nobody," she said to me. "Your sister-in-law delivered us a grandchild like she was having lunch. You're the only screwy one." Her words made me feel encumbered, like I didn't belong. The pressure was like a boulder pressing on my chest 24 hours a day. Fast forward a few months of this heartbreak, and one day my best friend Isabella invited me out for drinks. It had been months since I had time to myself. Michael was working later and later, or at least that's what he told me. Late nights, weekends in the office, business dinners, he was never at home. That night at a bar, Isabella's face turned serious. "Caroline, I've missed you. I need to tell you something so important." "Of course. What's on your mind?" I asked. "Do you remember Leah?" she began. Leah, yes. Michael's childhood friend. Their families were friends, and they had known each other forever. Leah and I were at the same college, but we'd never been close. She worked at the same company as Isabella, but in a different department. We'd met once, and that was when Michael played introducer. "Here is my girlfriend, so please be nice." Leah gave me a look that day. It went through me, like I was robbing her blind of something. She was elegant, she was beautiful, and she was one of those women who stole hearts without even trying. She had made an appearance in beauty pageants as a college student. As the daughter of the CEO, she was quasi-famous in her company. "Yeah, I know Leah. We actually work in the same company, but we've barely said anything to each other," I told her cautiously. "Why do you bring her up?" Isabella took a deep breath. "I think your husband is cheating on her." My heart stopped. "What?" "I saw them together. They walked finger in finger." This was not friendly, Caroline. It was as if it were a date. I felt sick. I had been so leery of something, and when I heard it confirmed, it nearly broke me. The late hours, the weekends, working, the coolness, it all made sense now. I was trying to pretend I didn't notice, trying to convince myself I was up in arms for nothing. The first thing I did the next morning was phone a detective agency. I craved the truth, the cold, hard facts. And within a week, I had it. Pictures, where you were, receipts. They had been together. He had been cheating. But I couldn't quite get myself to start divorce proceedings right away. As cruel as he was, I had at some point promised to spend the rest of my life with him. I wasn't ready to end it. Not yet. A few days later, I came home to a surprise. Michael was, for once, in the dining room before his time. "Oh, you're home," I said. "Yeah, I need to speak to you," he said, barely looking at me as he walked past. I braced myself. "I want a divorce." His words hit like a truck. "So that's how it is?" I asked. He didn't flinch. "Leah is pregnant. I'm going to marry her." My knees nearly buckled. "You said she was a friend. All along you were having another affair?" "Do not call it an affair," he laughed. "That just makes it sound like I'm the bad guy." "You are a bad guy," I snarled. "She can get pregnant. She's beautiful. Now why would I do that to break up with you?" he said, shameless and smug. "Well, my mom's been telling me to divorce you. She's prettier than me, nurturing. She can give me a child, she says." I gasp. Real talk, she was always more into Leah. Tears burned my eyes. Unbelievable. "Well, I've packed my things. I've got to get back to Leah and the baby," he said, grinning as he walked out of the door. Soon after, I was served with divorce papers, along with a handwritten note from Leah that read, "Please divorce my husband soon." My blood boiled. "Your husband. You stole him." But I didn't sit and cry. I collected evidence of the detective and applied to the court for divorce mediation. A few days later, my phone went off. "An unknown number," I said, and a woman's hoarse, angry squawk tumbled onto the floor. "What do you think you're doing? Why did you file a lawsuit?" It was Leah. I stayed calm. "Isn't it obvious? You were the other woman in a marriage. I deserve to get paid for it." "Compensation? I'm pregnant. I need money for the baby. You're being so cruel." "Cruel? You are the one who ruined a marriage," I said with icy indignation. "It's you who's barren, you vile woman!" She screamed. I put the phone down and sat back, waiting for the mediation. The proof was enough to bat aside any excuses Michael and Leah tried to make in court. The judge, when giving his judgment in his absolute discretion, described their relationship as adulterous, and my lack of fertility is also Michael's fault. Or rather, when we were in court, he was asked to provide evidence of a medical diagnosis after a year of trying to conceive, and he couldn't. The alimony that Michael must pay is set at $20,000. The more active Leah was ordered to pay, $110,000. I settled and completely removed myself from them. But even well after the legal resolution, the emotional cost lingered. Because Michael, Leah, and I all attended the same college, the scandal was ubiquitous. Rumors as well that I had conned Michael into marriage, that I'd just flat out hidden my infertility. There were some that even took Leah's side, claiming that she was the victim. At the office, Leah cried and lied. For Caroline to have the nerve to say she's asking for money now that I'm having a baby, she was never infertile. She was everyone's heartthrob, the president's daughter. "Don't make trouble for Leah," my bosses say. I was excluded from crucial projects and sidelined. In the end, I had to give it up. Fortunately, I was poached by another company. "We need someone like you, somebody who works hard," the team told him. It had been so long since someone appreciated me. I thrived at that new job. It was warm and supportive. There was no patronage, no nepotism. Ethan, my boss, saw what I was doing. He saw me, not just as an employee, but as a person. He had been a rock for me during the low point of my life. We spent time together, we conversed, and we giggled. Slowly, feelings blossomed. One night after dinner, he locked eyes with me and proposed to me. I was overwhelmed. I told him everything, about my past, my fears, and the infertility I didn't yet know I did or didn't have. Ethan took my hands and whispered, "Oh my gosh, I'd love to have kids with you, but also because I love you. Caroline, you are my world. It doesn't matter if we never have kids, I'll still be here with you." Then he wrapped me in a warm embrace, and for the first time in years, I felt safe, loved, whole. "Mommy, you're late." "Ah, Mom, you have kids?" I smiled and replied, "Yes, I do." "Let me introduce them. This is my son Liam and my daughter Emma." Michael stared. These had been the children of the woman he'd thought was barren. Leah stared intently at Liam, and in a low, rasping voice she sneered, "You mean that uniform?" "He came straight from school with my husband." "So he's in his uniform still," I said. "No, not that. I mean that uniform," she repeated with a narrowed eye. "It's the one from that famous private middle school, right?" "Oh, yes. Liam was a hard-working student, and he said he would like to try, so we put him in for the entrance test. He jumped in and has been running since this year. My son was very good in his studies and is now studying in one of the best schools in the town." "No way. That is not your son. Of all people." "My daughter, too," I added. "She's supposed to be taking that test again next year." "Yeah, and Liam is amazing. He just won a violin competition," Emma said proudly. "Violin?" Leah blinked. "Wait, I think I've seen him on TV lately." "Ah, you saw that?" I smiled. "Yes, he's been getting a little more media attention of late. He was returning from violin practice today." "No, this can't be." Michael and Leah looked at them in shock. "You were supposed to be sterile." "How do you have a child like this?" Michael finally stammered. I smiled faintly and went smooth on them. "You guys look happy, and I'm happy for you. Clearly, I'm happy too. So please, let's stay out of each other's stuff. We're not even related anymore." It was at that moment that my husband, Ethan, came over to our circle of friends. "Hey, what's going on? The show's about to begin," he said, feeling oddly amused by how tense the room had grown. Michael's face lost color on the arrival of Ethan. Leah also went white. "Wait, by any chance is your husband that young Mr. Lopez? The one who became president of the residence last year?" "Yes," I said. "Method is the parent company of Leah's father's company, and Ethan is its present president. I was transitioning jobs, and I signed with that company, and I met Ethan there. He was already a popular and talented player. He was elevated to company president last year at the recommendation of the previous president." I'm Lopez." "What is this? A cringy mood?" Ethan asked, puzzled. Liam jumped in before I could reply. "These people have called her sterile and fat, so Emma and I ran to assist her." "You heard that, huh?" I said gently. Liam and Emma must have heard Michael and Leah's epithets. That is why Liam had been so unburdened in what he said earlier. Michael's eyes flickered, and then he began to stutter through an explanation. "No, I mean, Mr. Lopez, sir. I could never speak ill of the president's wife." Right, Leah added quickly. "Why are you genuflecting to this lady's husband?" Leah snapped. "I'm the one who suffered. Oh, she threw items at me, threw things at me, and stole my money. I'll never forgive her." Nat, Mooch, Leah, Michael took her arm and murmured urgently, "Do think before you open your mouth. Not liking us, that's it. We're finished with our subcontracting company. and the two began scuffling right in front of us. Their son, who had been silent throughout, finally interrupted. "Can't we just end this already? I've been listening, and you're the worst, talking all this shit about this lady, calling her fat and infertile and shit, shaping upside-down comebacks about her and demanding money back. It's embarrassing. And how about an affair? Am I her son in Messire, and am I not? Am I unwanted?" His voice rose and broke from emotion, tears poised to pour from his eyes. Michael and Leah looked shaken. Well, it's not like that," they stammered. A few others nearby had started to take notice of the ruckus. Leah had turned red, only now noticing the staring. Still, I thought the world of their son. He was not accountable for the mistake of his parents, but he fought for the right. I was going to respond when Ethan interrupted me. "Thanks for standing up for my wife," said he, patting the boy kindly on the head. "You're a kind child." I chuckled and added, "Well, okay, maybe I'm a little chubby." "That's not true. It's not true at all," Ethan insisted. "Well, I am pregnant," I whispered, placing my hand on my belly. Yes, I was carrying our third child. Then I bent down a little to the boy and talked to him. "Mommy also very carefully carried you in her belly. You're not unwanted. Your mom and dad love and are proud of you, aren't they?" I looked at Michael and Leah. Her son also was regarding them. His eyes were still filled with tears. "Really?" he asked them. Michael and Leah were nodding emphatically. "Yes, yes, of course," Michael replied. "You're our pride," Leah chimed in. "You mean so much to us." The boy was beaming, and I just felt so relieved when I saw that. "Let's get back to our seats," I suggested quietly. "Today is a day of joy." We returned to our seats, and the turple blurg blub bee ceased. The wedding did turn out well after all. Michael and Leah met us clutching their son as we proceeded to the station. Liam and Emma were blocking me. Ethan was shaking his head with a half laugh at them to stop them from trying to calm me down. "Sorry about the whole thing," Michael responded. "We are really sorry. It's a bit late, but for us it's regretful, and we apologize. Even today we regret everything. And thank you for before." It was the first time in 15 years that any of them had apologized to me. Maybe they were a little softened by becoming parents. I let out a short laugh. "Really? After all this time?" And walking, off I turned. I handed over the bag with the maternity mark to Liam as he became the pack mule. They threw their gay coat over me, Emma's. Even at such a tender age, they were already caring for me when I was carrying them. "All right, dinner tonight is going to be Dad's homemade burgers, and they're your favorite," I said. "Yay, thank you!" they both cheered. I pledged to protect the smiles of my loved family even as we walked out of the darkened halls of history.